Hari Om Raviji.
Hari Om.
I would like to know how and when you have met Pujya Gurudev.
Well, it was in the summer of '85. There was a Jnana Yajna at Stanford, and I happened to work for a gentleman, Gulu Advani, who at Hewlett Packard, and he gave me the flyer to attend this Yajna. In fact, he almost ordered me to go there. So to please him, not to listen to Gurudev, to please my boss, I went to Stanford.
Okay.
And I waited and found out the way Gurudev would be coming. And so I was waiting near the door of that Kresge auditorium at Stanford. And I found out, to my pleasure, that Gurudev was being ushered on a wheelchair by nobody other than Gulu Advani. So I thought, this is wonderful. I'll say hello to both of them, stay for a while, and then leave. So I did namaskar to Gurudev, and first time I met him, first time I saw him, I was totally impressed. I sat in the last seat of the last row of Kresge Hall in the back, ready to sneak out as soon as the lights were turned down. And when Gurudev came on the stage and started, those days, the first 2 days he would talk about something called Introduction to Vedanta. I think they call it something else now. And it was all about the human personality model, how we think, what is it about us that makes us do things, etc. It was like I had all these thousands of, sorry, I get emotional every time I think of that. I didn't know how these 2 hours went by. By the time I was done, my shirt was wet, and I was wondering what happened. And it turned out that I had been crying all this time. That was my introduction to Chinmaya Mission and to Gurudev, and I never left. I decided from that point on to attend all the yajnas that Gurudev would conduct. And I had a sympathizing boss who would allow me to attend those, although I found out other bosses also were quite nice about it. And I attended every year, along with my family, I would attend a camp. And I think my first camp was at San Jose State, right here. And Gurudev, discipline got to me at that point. I learned all the definitions about this BMI, etc. I didn't know any of that. And I never talked to Gurudev myself. So he quietly sneaked in towards his room while he was writing letters one day, and he realized that I was very hesitantly trying to talk to him, and he made me very comfortable. We had a small exchange, and he explained a few things to me, and very happily I left.
What was that exchange like?
I went there just to meet him. There was this attraction that I felt that pulled me towards him. And I didn't know what to ask him, and I probably put my hand towards my forehead, and he thought I was trying to ask the meaning of this tika on the forehead. And he spent a couple of minutes explaining what it's all about.
What is it all about? What was it all about?
Well, what he said was that the seat of our awareness resides in the middle of the forehead. And to honor that spiritual essence within us, we worship it by putting some chandan on it every morning. Which, coming from him, I knew about it a little bit myself, but coming from him as a confirmation was, it was very, very subtle. It touched me, plus the very fact that I got to talk to him for the first time. That was the other thing I learned in that camp was that he was a very strict disciplinarian. If there was any noise in the hall,
He never liked it.
he didn't like it. There was somebody who had brought a kid to the hall, and the kid cried, and he stopped talking. And until this fellow took his kid away from the hall. And then he explained, he said, you know, when a noise like this happens in a quiet environment, the emotion that goes from each one of you towards that noise source is bad for that person. So it is not good for you to bring small children here who cannot understand what's happening, and because of their nature, they'll start fiddling around and making noise. So I said, wow. At the end of that camp, there were a lot of teenagers that were asking questions, and somebody asked about dating. And he gave them a lecture that I don't think most of them liked. And their parents later on were trying to kind of soft pedal it, simplify it for them, so they will digest it a little bit.
Your children also were part of Balavihar?
Yes. My daughter started there all the way through Yuva Kendra. My son started younger. He's 6 years younger. He started right from first grade. In fact, in first grade, he liked a particular teacher who taught Balavihar because she was so pretty. This little kid, this is something else. Anyway, he refused to go to another teacher. My daughter, she is an ardent devotee of Gurudev and Guruji. She now lives in Houston, just 2 miles from the mission there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in Sugarland. And my son grew up, and we thought he was not interested, but he attended a lot of these youth camps, etc. And recently, he organized youth camps for Chinmaya Mission, very successful ones. My daughter always thought that she was dancing her Arangetram for Gurudev. And when Gurudev actually came to Krishnalaya the same year later on, she danced for him. And at the end of the dance, after she bowed down in front of Gurudev, he took his ring out and put it in her hand. And she has never removed it from that hand since. It was been many years now.
How he acknowledged
It was
every
fantastic.
person, oh my God.
We went to Humboldt camp in early years, in my early years with Chinmaya Mission. And he would receive these kids, you know, both arms, and he had long arms, by the way. He would grab 2 kids at a time. My kiddies, come here, and kiss them here. And there was some would stay on to pull on his beard a little bit. Some would do other things. That's how my children remember him. It was just amazing. When we left the Humboldt camp, it was a 2-week camp. I had only 1 week vacation, so after I left, after the first week I had to leave, and we went to ask for permission. He was sitting in a room pretending to watch this tennis game. He would always watch tennis game, which was quite interesting. He just keep people quiet for some time. And his health was not too good either. So the game was going on, and we sat in front of him. He closed his eyes. We could not ask permission. So after a couple of hours, he opened his eyes. And so I said, Swamiji, we have to leave. We're getting late now. He says, oh, yeah, no problem. And he blessed my children and all. We left. 9 miles down the road, we found an awful accident had happened 2 hours earlier, and the road was blocked. So I said, my God, there was a reason why Gurudev stopped for such a long time. We were so fiddling, you know, getting anxious. When can we leave? When can we leave? And this must have been the reason. There's another episode I remember. I attended a camp in Tacoma, Washington. This is one camp where I think my family was the only Indians there. And they were all, most of the attendees were students from some Catholic seminary. And they had all been told by their, whatever they call him, bishop or somebody, to attend this camp. So the first day, there's a huge hall. It was in a university campus. And Gurudev came and sat on a sofa, and all the people were just sitting and watching him. They didn't know what to do. So after I came and sat near him, did pranam, and he just sat there. And after a while, he took off his glasses. He goes like this. He says, a Swami is like a bell. Unless you hit it, it will not make a sound. So it was immediately an instruction for people. If you have a question, come over, ask me. So I asked him the first question. I said, Swamiji, what motivates you to do all this? He looked at me and said, Buddhu, love, love. Then he said, you'll make me talk too much, meaning that it is a very vast subject, but that's the essence. And then all the other people came closer and started talking to him. And then for the remaining whole week, it was a different scenario. And I also remember that camp, since those people were serious Catholics in front of him, he gave a lot of examples from Bible. In fact, I remember him stretching his arms like this and talking about something. He looked like Jesus on the cross. I still have that in front of me, that vision. It was just awesome, amazing to watch him.
Yeah.
Anyway, my next camp I remember is the Gita Marathon camp in PRC. It was in a huge tent. Huge meaning it could hold about 150 people. So, and it was very cold those days. It was raining from time to time. And a couple of things that I remember is, one, he would teach simply by his actions. I remember he was talking about Kshetra and Kshetrajna one day. He came, they had made a ramp for him to walk on because he could hardly walk those days. He came on ramp. On the stage, there's a little window on the right side. He started looking through that window. There's nothing there. It's just garbage actually on the other side of it. He looked, the camera couldn't see the garbage, and nor could people. So he looked through the window and turned around. He says, I, the Kshetrajna, looking through the window of my BMI at the Kshetra. And then he sat down. And I realized that since he didn't have the mic on, people didn't hear him. So he repeated the whole thing. I was in the front. I said, wow, that's a heck of a way of teaching stuff. The same thing I had done in my first camp at Stanford in the morning class. He would start talking from the moment he walked on the stage.
True, true. Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was just amazing, time control. And then since I was involved with the temple here in Livermore, Gulu once took him to the temple and he asked me to come along. And Gurudev was proofreading something he had somebody type for him earlier. He proofread about 50 pages during that 1 hour. While we were sitting trying to make small talk with him, and he go, yeah, yes. And continued on his page after page after page. When the Sandipani opened in San Jose, we had an inauguration for that. So the hall, which was no more than the size of this room here, it could hardly hold about 60 people. And he was downstairs, and when he came up, there is Gurudev wearing a dhoti, and he had chandanam all over. You know, normally they put 3 lines. No, there was about 7, 8 lines on each side. He looked like Jagdishwara himself. In the first Mahasamadhi camp in San Diego, we had invited a chief guest from Vedanta Society. His name was Swami. He was the first person to translate most of the Upanishads into English in the West. It's originally from Bangladesh, but if you saw him, you couldn't tell he's from South Asia. He's very fair looking. At that time I was 80 something years old. So I was sitting with him and I asked him, well, what do you find about Chinmaya Mission? He said, you know, one thing unique is that Chinmaya catches the whole family. He says, in our place we catch adults and teach them. And that too mostly men. But Chinmaya, there's something for children, something for youth, something for adults, something for sannyasins, something for everybody.
Yeah.
I said, wow, that is true.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your wonderful memories. And I invoke Pujya Gurudev's grace for the new discoveries, spiritual discoveries with your life. Thank you so much. Thank you.